As the pinnacle of wilderness survival, the skill levels of the contestants in Alone Season 9 are simply insane. Armed with just a recurve bow, they hunt beavers and eat an endless supply of raw chicken, allowed to bring only 10 pieces of gear. 10 people are dropped into Labrador to begin their survival challenge. No script, no camera crews following them, facing wolves in front and polar bears behind. Will they break down in tears, or fight back with the pose of a champion? The last one standing will win a cash prize of $500,000. The first contestant featured in this episode is Callie. As soon as she landed, she was abandoned by the production crew's helicopter. Suppressing her excitement, she took a deep breath to keep herself calm. Looking at the mountains and waters before her, she had no time to just admire the scenery. The priority now was to find an ideal spot to set up camp. Back home in Idaho, Callie lived in a yurt she built herself. Living a secluded life, her drinking water came from snow, and her warmth depended entirely on firewood. Making her own herbal remedies and hunting for protein were second nature to her. She is currently a primitive skills instructor, specializing in tanning hides. Her dream is to open her own wilderness survival school. After searching the hilltop for a while, Callie suddenly had a bad feeling. Dark clouds were gathering in the sky nearby. One should note that the local offshore wind speeds can reach up to 96 kilometers per hour. The weather changes faster than you can flip a page. Once it rains, the entire area becomes like a water-soaked sponge. Being drenched like a drowned rat is an understatement. As she walked, she gathered dry tinder, just in case of emergency. Soon, dark clouds loomed overhead. Callie found a few trees to use as shelter, tying paracord to a dead tree nearby, and draping a tarp over it in a few quick moves. A crude lean-to was completed. While it couldn't stop a sneak attack from predators, it was perfectly fine for weathering the storm. The second contestant to appear is. The first impression he gives in this episode is that his strength is not to be underestimated. Surveying the surroundings, there are rivers, forests, and typical marshland terrain. This is a favorite gathering spot for moose and elk. The only downside is that it's too damp. Trekking along the riverbank, he looked for a place to build a shelter and set traps. Back home, he is a hunting and mountain goat expedition guy. He has spent his entire life surviving in the Rockies. What he is most proud of is his 30 years of traditional bow hunting experience. With formidable wilderness skills, countless large beasts have fallen to him. He was once a weightlifting champion, now returning to the wild. He lives a carefree life. Both his will and strength far exceed the average person. Joining the challenge has nothing to do with money. He just wants to break the alone record of the longest survival up to 100 days. Seeing a storm about to hit from the west, he realized that building a shelter was urgent. Carrying his gear, he looked for a campsite. As soon as he entered the forest, his extreme luck kicked in. Free berries everywhere caught his eye, bright red and looking very appetizing. Without thinking twice, he packed them up first. He wouldn't have to worry about carbohydrates for the next few days. While he was happily gathering, the chattering of a squirrel reached his ears. He was just worrying about a snack to go with a drink, and here comes one delivering itself to the door. Locating the target, he fired a precision shot. The sound stopped instantly. My goodness, this archery skill would make the legendary Juan Zhang call him a pro. Successfully claiming the first blood of the season. Unfortunately, the torrential rain started without warning. He faced a hell mode scenario right from the start. Unsurprisingly, he was soaked to the bone. He was harshly taught a lesson by the Labrador weather. He began to regret not building his shelter sooner. The third person to appear is Jessie. Being her first time filming herself, she was a bit overwhelmed. It wasn't until she arrived that she realized this wasn't just wilderness survival, it was essentially living a primitive life. Back home in Colorado, she was a former Air Force instructor, teaching people survival, evasion, resistance, and escape skills. She currently works as a survival coach, with experience surviving in various complex and treacherous terrains. She is proficient in building shelters, friction fire, and hand weaving. Facing the life-changing $500,000, as a strong woman, she had no reason not to try. With her bow and arrows, she scouted the forest. First to familiarize herself with the environment, and second to look for a campsite. Coming upon a small creek, just as she was about to cross, their prints on the ground put Jessie on alert. They looked fresh. At that thought, her adrenaline immediately spiked. In a one-on-one melee fight, she would have no chance of winning. She chose a nearby flat area on higher ground, tied paracord between two large trees, laid a tarp over it, and set up a lean-to. Jessie's wish wasn't overly ambitious. She just wanted to be the female champion of Alone. After that, she collected some branches to lay on the ground. It was incredibly comfortable to lie on at night. Night fell in the blink of an eye. Footsteps around the camp gave her a huge fright. If she guessed correctly, it must be a bear, less than 30 meters from the camp. If it dared to come closer, she wouldn't mind taking it down for some meat. The next morning arrived, and Callie headed out with her bow. The weather changed too quickly, and she hadn't had time to scout the surroundings. Along the way, she wanted to find a piece of land suitable for a permanent shelter. With some luck, she might encounter some protein. Looking at the trampled tracks beneath her feet, it was clear a large predator had passed through. Following this trail, Callie continued to track. As she walked, she spotted a grouse. Didn't even say hello to the mother hen. Knocked the arrow. A cloud-piercing arrow was shot. As expected, a beautiful, clean hit. Tally was not discouraged. Such a rare chance to eat meat couldn't be given up so easily. He followed the trail and found it hiding on a tree stump. Before he could act, it flew down the mountain, passing through dense shrubs. Just as he was worrying about the lost tracks, a black shadow flashed before his eyes. Little did it know that hiding in the grass wouldn't keep it safe. Tally tried not to make a sound, quietly approaching, aiming for the grouse's backside to deliver a fatal blow. A second later, the sound of flapping and struggling wings was heard. Such abundant resources. This doesn't feel like survival. To put it bluntly, it's no different from a vacation. Returning to camp to pluck the feathers, cleaning out the internal organs, stir-frying in an iron pot for 21 minutes. As the aroma spread, Carly enjoyed the feast heartily. Full of chicken flavor, chewy and satisfying. It would be even more perfect with some cumin. Absolutely amazing. The protein content is probably many times that of beef. The fourth contestant to appear is Juan. He fell flat on his face the moment he arrived. The good news is, he found a ground full of berries, but didn't have time to pack them. The priority now is for him to head to high ground, to find a piece of auspicious land suitable for setting up camp. Before the competition, he lived in Canada. Born with an adventurous spirit in his bones, since childhood, he loved running and hunting in the jungle. He has mastered every survival skill he needs to know. Before coming to Labrador, he completed a 100-day expedition, supporting himself through gathering, hunting, and fishing. Currently living a happy life with his girlfriend. His wish is to win the $500,000, to buy a piece of land for the two of them. After trekking not far, he discovered a pile of fresh black bear scat. Let's go. Juan wasn't afraid at all. He was even full of anticipation. If he could catch one, wouldn't he advance directly to the finals? Moving forward, he found a flat open space. Not only was it dry, but it wasn't far from a water source. And there was plenty of sunlight. As for the shelter, something that just keeps him warm and protects from wind and rain is enough. Carrying a sod, he picked a spot for the camp nearby. For this challenge, Juan came fully prepared. He specifically gained over 40 gin, about 20 kilograms before the race, to prepare for emergencies. Carrying logs back to camp, tying them between two large trees as beams, laying down a waterproof tarp, quickly building the frame. Just then, the chattering of squirrels was heard. He rushed out with his bow and arrow, pricking up his ears to find the source of the sound. As the sound abruptly stopped, the atmosphere felt a bit off. Looking around, a blur whistled past. Good grief, before he could see what it was, it had already vanished. He hurried to track it from behind. He didn't hunt any protein, but found a ground full of bottles and cans. Although they couldn't be eaten or drunk, Juan had a sudden idea. He planned to turn them into a firewood stove. Returning to camp, he used the saw to remove the bottoms of the cans, connecting several together to make a chimney, creating an air intake and a firewood opening respectively, binding them tightly together. Once assembled, it became a wild firewood stove. Worried about burning the waterproof tarp, he removed the fireproof material from his leg wraps, denting wire into needles to sew it, then embedding it into the waterproof tarp, moving the stove into the shelter, fixing it in the correct position, not wanting the fire to burn the shelter down. He found some clay nearby to seal the surroundings firmly, making it impossible to move an inch. He worked until late at night. The base was finally completed, leaving space for boiling water and cooking. With this equipment boost, the heating effect will be fully utilized. Time moves to the third day. The fifth person to appear is Jacques, daring to participate in a starvation challenge at age 23. One doesn't know whether to call him young and reckless or commendable for his courage. In his hometown of Alaska, he is a glacier guide. His daily routine is either exploring ice caves or climbing ice blocks. He often encounters bears coming out to forage. Consequently, he's had his fair share of encounters with them. This job has allowed Jacques to develop a calm attitude when facing difficulties. He became interested in wilderness survival at age 11. Building, fishing, and hunting can be said to be things he has down pat. Together with his girlfriend Catherine, he lives a free life of camping and wandering the world, heading out with his survival gear to look for calories. After trekking several miles, he didn't find any food, but a rusty animal trap caught Jacques' eye. If used well, it might just be the ticket to the finals, suitable for trapping ermines and wild white rabbits. Resetting the log, testing it with a stick. My goodness, unexpectedly, it's still quite sensitive. Time moves to the fourth day. The sixth contestant to appear is Igor. Up until now, he hasn't built a shelter, sleeping rough in the wilderness. Today's task is the same as usual. Continue climbing to high ground, to find a suitable place to camp. Looking at his drop-off point, And the places he's been running these past few days, he hasn't saved a single calorie, with no protein supplements for 4 days. His body has already triggered its passive skill. In his hometown of Utah, his family lives in the wilderness, relying on the land for a living. Possessing mixed heritage from Armenia, Egypt, France, and Russia, the displacements of his ancestors only allowed him to live the stable life he is now. Living in the wilderness, he had to master various jungle survival skills. Hunting with a bow and arrow was naturally second nature to him. Now that he has a wife, compared to his previous bachelor life, he joined the challenge to secure a better future for the two of them. After wandering through the jungle for several hours, as far as the eye could see, it was either steep cliffs or soggy marshes. After finally finding a piece of land with great feng shui, he discovered he had returned to the starting point. Stranded seaweed hung from the trees along the shore. Not far away was a flowing freshwater river. Flat and dry, he had wasted 3.5 days' worth of calories for nothing. He went to the stream to get some fresh water, and used a small fire to cook a pot of seaweed soup. In half an hour, a seafood feast was ready. With one gulp, it tasted like the entire periodic table mixed with thick soup. The carbohydrate content was likely dozens of times higher than that of beef. Not until his stomach started growling did Jaw prepare to get out of his sleeping bag. Just as he was worrying about finding protein, he heard the chattering of a squirrel in his ear. Without a second thought, he grabbed his bow and arrow and crept up stealthily. He pinpointed the target and aimed. He released a fatal blow. The screaming stopped abruptly. Without a doubt, it was a hit. Jacques held it in the palm of his hand, thanking it as if it were a precious treasure, a gift from nature. Before he could even cook it, a spruce grouse flew over his head. With a racing heart and trembling hands, he knew he couldn't use blunt-head arrows for these. Putting away his gear, he searched for the grouse's silhouette. "Little guy, you think being able to fly can save you from a hunter's claws?" He immediately sent a cloud-piercing arrow its way. Unexpectedly, the bird was wounded and fled. He couldn't let such a prime piece of meat go to waste. With no navigation and no map, he tracked it from behind using a hunter's intuition. Before long, a conspicuous blood trail caught his eye. Despite the young man's age, his tracking skills were surprisingly exquisite. Returning to camp, he used a fire starter to ignite the stove. He put the processed Jerry the squirrel and the grouse together for a heartless mixed stew. While waiting, Jacques took the opportunity to reveal his regrettable past. Now, his achievements were inextricably linked to the pressures of his life back then. A fragrant wilderness feast emerged after a few hours. Dipping the meat in the broth, it tasted incredibly authentic. The camera moves to Ben. He is enjoying a lovely sunbath. Judging by his fat-filled physique, he definitely came well prepared. Taking advantage of the bright sunshine, he prepared to make a fishing rod to catch some wild crucian carp for a change of taste. Dead branches and rotten wood lay all over the edge of the jungle. He went over and picked them one by one. While ensuring the length, the flexibility could not be overlooked, he tied on the fishing line and hook. Ignoring the great river dozens of meters wide, he chose a seemingly shallow tributary. As the tide rose, many small fish and shrimp were trapped here. By repeatedly casting the hook to mimic a worm, he quickly attracted his first piece of protein. Since getting that first win, Den's good luck became unstoppable. The fish scrambled to bite the hook, fearing they would spoil. He used stones to build a small dam to store them. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. He counted them exactly 12 fish. He returned to camp without losing a single one. Drenched in sweat, he began to cook. Unlike previous contestants, Den chose table salt as one of his 10 items of equipment. Adding an appropriate amount during cooking supplemented the daily essential trace elements for his body. He fried them until both sides were golden brown. With one bite, my goodness, the meat was fresh and delicious. With the aroma of fish filling his mouth, the taste can only be described as absolutely delicious. With strong capabilities plus cooking skills, it's likely he'll actually gain 3 pounds by the end of the challenge. The 7th contestant to appear is Temujin. From his name to his appearance, it's easy to see he is definitely an Asian contestant. He trekked with difficulty through the jungle in the rain. Considering the flash floods that had occurred recently, the site of his shelter could not be chosen carelessly. Before entering the competition, he lived in Canada. Having served 6 years in the military, he specialized in combat and survival in cold weather. Coupled with his local advantage, it's easy to see he is another formidable opponent. He is currently a general practitioner, mainly responsible for emergency and wilderness medicine. With multiple buffs stacked, he is a rare talent in the entire survival community. Due to the exorbitant cost of his education, he joined the challenge. On one hand, it was to pay off his student loans, and on the other, he didn't want his parents to continue tolling, so they could retire as soon as possible. After strolling for half an hour, he spotted a relatively flat piece of ground. He took out some paracord and tied it between 2 large trees. To last until the end, Temujin strived to make every task simple and effective, to avoid wasting unnecessary calories. Next, he laid down a waterproof tarp. In no time, He finished a crude lean-to-shelter. The time moves to the second day. The 8th person to appear is Terry. He had a look of total bewilderment on his face. It turned out he had discovered a seal lying on the rocks behind him. Back in his hometown of Alaska, Terry had been a commercial fisherman for nearly 10 years. During the busy season, he worked 20 hours a day without a break. But the good news was that the working season only lasted for months. The rest of the time, he stayed in the countryside living a wilderness life, hunting moose, and practicing jungle survival skills. He had never experienced a solo adventure lasting more than 30 days. He currently lives with his parents. He learned to fish at age 3 and hunted his first white-tailed deer at age 11. Faced with the prospect of an easy $500,000, he had no reason to refuse. Seeing beavers appearing in the river, Terry realized that the water was likely contaminated with giardia. Not wanting to suffer from diarrhea, he had to boil the water before drinking. He returned to his shelter to start the fire. Unexpectedly, all the collected tinder was soaked. He goes nearby to search again. Everything is damp, which puts Terry in a difficult spot. A sudden spark of inspiration strikes. He uses an axe to split the heart of a wooden stump. It feels bone dry. Back at camp, he strikes the fire starter frantically. It seems he's almost worn it down to a needle. He works from evening until deep into the night. Not a single spark appears. Stubborn persistence only pushes him toward a breakdown, accompanied by a slight headache. Clearly, dehydration symptoms have set in. He first crawls under the waterproof tarp, and during the night, he'll make plans tomorrow. Now we arrive at the third day. The 9th person to appear is Tom. Chewing on berries, he has the aura of a survival expert. He brings a bow and arrow into the jungle to find some protein. Tired of carbohydrates, he can't wait to change his palate. In his hometown of Virginia, Tom lives on a farm of over 1,900 acres. Under his regenerative agriculture management, the land is exceptionally fertile. Living in the wild for years, whether it's handwork or tracking skills, he has mastered them to perfection. Growing up in South Africa since childhood, traveling far and wide with his father, he has experienced many local customs. His hunting skills rival those of the natives. Now that he has a family and a career, he enjoys the challenge to provide a better future for his wife. His strength is practically impeccable. The only shortcoming is a lack of fat reserves. After trekking for a while, the chirping sounds of Jerry keep coming from around him. Tom doesn't play by the rules. Sneaking around, searching for their position. After spotting the target, he lets fly a precise arrow. The chirping stops abruptly. A second later, he has a piece of protein in his hand. While apologizing, he wants it mildly spicy with cumin. At camp, he cooks it in an iron pot over a high flame for a few minutes. Famished, he takes a big bite. My goodness, neither too salty nor too bland, an authentic roasted flavor. The protein content is likely many times that of beef. While enjoying it, he cannot let his guard down. If a black bear suddenly appears, he's finished. Now we arrive at the 5th day. The last contestant to appear is Adam. From Arkansas, he is a treehouse carpenter and a professional alpaca shearer. Out of a love for the wilderness, he taught himself survival skills, setting traps and weaving ground nets. His proudest achievement is sailing across the Pacific. 90 days in total, completely on his own. That experience gave him an attitude of forging ahead in the face of difficulty. As a manual laborer, with increasing age, his profession has become precarious. Faced with a challenge that could save him 10 years of struggle, Adam found no reason to refuse. His survival strategy is simple. First, build a warm and comfortable shelter. Then, hunt a 300 kilograms black bear. Eat it sparingly. It shouldn't be a problem to make it to the finals. He aligns a dozen logs neatly, sets up the roof, spreads the waterproof tarp. The shelter frame is easily completed in a few moves to increase insulation and cold resistance. The roof surface is densely covered with spruce branches. As for the walls, a layer of wood, then a layer of moss. While his energy is still high in the early stages, Adam brings out his master carpentry skills, finishing the construction of his wilderness mansion in one go. Not having to worry about the hut, he can fully devote himself to hunting. Now we arrive at the 6th day. After an immense effort, Terry finally starts the fire, drinking crisp, refreshing boiled water. Drinking his fill. This feeling is incredibly comforting. Having solved the dehydration problem, it's time to set up the shelter. The height is kept consistent with his own, aligning the position, cutting it across the middle with a saw. He plans to build a conical tent, setting a crossbeam between two stakes, laying the waterproof tarp, finished quickly in no time. He hasn't had meat for several days. He takes a fishing rod to the river to catch a crucian carp. With abundant fish resources, within 5 minutes, Terry attracts a bite on the hook. He thinks if he had a gill net, he would have caught plenty. Unfortunately, local regulations only allow non-commercial fishing rods or dip nets. Looking at the plump flounder in his hand, Terry finally doesn't have to rely on his passive skills. Now we arrive at the 7th day. Before the cold air arrives, Temujin prepares to dig a Dakota fire pit. The depth of the pit is about the length of the stick in his hand. It can effectively hide the flames, making it hard to detect. He builds a ring of mud walls with the excavated soil. Then he digs a channel from the bottom of the pit to the outside. The combustion effect after completion is similar to using a blower. Once done, he ignites it with the fire starter. The flames shoot upward rapidly. He won't have to worry about warmth all winter. Now we arrive at the 8th day. To win the challenge, Tom is well prepared. He specifically dyed his hair green. Without a doubt, it's the perfect choice for making a flying eagle lure. As long as he can catch something, he hopes he doesn't end up bald. Combined with nylon rope and a squirrel tail, assembling the three together, it's a fake lure that fish cannot resist. Once finished, he can't wait to try it by the river. In less than 2 minutes, he attracts one, a greedy fellow. With a great start, the good luck becomes unstoppable. They scramble to bite the hook. Soon, he harvests 3 plump river trout. Unsurprisingly, it's another feast. Now we arrive at the 10th day, and Chen Gaji Ri, Kun Jerry, Jakti Lam Mg Gai Mok Bcc Bay, Kang Dat La Du Thuk Luk Mdn He K Niu, Chai Ag 10 Fat, Ulgi Kao Ji Ko Yon 10, Vua Vang Kio Lan BD, Tri Tim Kichong, Dan Te Run Ray, and Gay LPPTIC Chi Hinter Chak Kon Kien Ko VVI Kuk Babyja, Non Kabio Tit, Sakien Cheng Chen Shik La Vas and Ngon, Ji Gim Bint Ti Kao Cak, Lam CCH Ui Tang and Gay Ticha, Viet Tri Nam Lael, Sean K Vau Quen Cheng Tran Nan, Benengoi Jiang, Bentron MGM, Kun VVIMEI Theme Lan Ta Cap Tri, Jacques Vong Thick MT Kasheng Gom Lan, MT Mieng Jun Bang Tren Ag Nang Liang, Niu Ko the KNT up VVI Kuman Gang Kua Kua Angtangt, Rick Then Chit Muyen. It probably doesn't taste any worse than a restaurant's, living in a wine and rain shelter, warming up in a cozy house, and eating authentic wilderness delicacies. To have made it this far was something he never expected. It is now day 11. Now that the villa is completed, it's time for Adam to go out and find some calories. He searches everywhere with his bow and arrows. After trekking not very far, he discovers some black bear droppings. Instead of being afraid, he actually gets excited. If he could catch a bear, wouldn't he fast track straight into the final round? Passing through some thickets, there's a large area of shrubs. He stands on high, admiring the beautiful scenery. Just then, a rustling sound suddenly comes from behind him. He looks back, and lo and behold, several grouse are laying eggs in the trees. Isn't this the wilderness feast he has long craved? He tracks the sound to locate the target. He draws the bow fully and fires a sneak attack behind him. A complete miss, hitting absolutely nothing. He didn't get any meat, but he certainly gained some experience. In this team of expert marksmen, he seems completely out of place. Dejected, he encounters another chirping fellow on the way back. Afraid of repeating the same mistake, Adam hesitates. He feels that if he gives up, he might as well quit the challenge immediately. Thus, under immense psychological pressure, he fires a second complete miss. After searching through the dense shrubs for a long time, unsurprisingly, both birds have vanished. It should be noted that the challenge rules state a maximum of 9 arrows are allowed. Every lost arrow represents a decrease in his chances of winning. It is now day 12. Jacques didn't expect himself to lose physical condition so quickly. He has already lost 10% compared to the start. He jokes that by the time he quits, he might even have an 8-pack. During the time he isn't hunting, he stockpiles firewood at the camp. While he is busy, he hears Jerry's call once again. My goodness, it's truly a case of sitting at home, while the meat falls from the sky. Equipped with his jungle gear, he searches for protein. Target spotted. Without a word, he fires an arrow. Unexpectedly, it misses by a mere 0.1 centimeters. Jacques doesn't give up, and tries again. With a whoosh, the chirping suddenly stops. He walks up to see Jerry lying asleep on the ground. While saying sorry, he is simultaneously drooling. Returning to camp to look at the trophy, Jacques considers whether to braise it or charcoal grill it. Waiting by the shore, he takes off his fur coat and gets the fire burning brightly. Without adding a single piece of onion, ginger, or garlic, he simmers it in an iron pot for half an hour. After tasting it, my goodness, it's tender and delicious, neither too salty nor too bland. The calories are likely many times that of beef. Failing to hunt grouse makes Adam feel quite bad. Not wanting to lose any more of his remaining arrows, he decides to catch a few wild crucian carp for a treat. He picks a long, straight spruce branch to use as a fishing rod. To be able to cast the hook further, he uses the iron ring from a waterproof tarp as a guide ring. He threads the fishing line and ties on the hook. Carrying his eagle fishing rod, he goes to the nearby vast river. He probably arrived just in time for the fish to come out and forage. Within just 2 minutes of casting, he catches a fish. Then, it becomes unstoppable. For a bite of food, the wild crucian carp scramble to bite the hook. In less than 2 hours, he captures 10 fish. After cleaning the protein, he pairs them with black fungus for an exquisite plating. At night, roasting by the fire and eating fragrant fish. If he could just have a bottle of birdie vodka, this life would be no different from a vacation. It is now day 14. Instead of sleeping soundly in the middle of the night, Jacques begins to contemplate the meaning of this journey. Compared to the unrestrained life in the wild, he longs more for building a happy and complete little family. It is now day 15. Early in the morning, he sits by the river continuing to reflect. Now with the company of his girlfriend and dog, his life is full of flavor. He can find no reason to continue persisting in wilderness survival. Having made up his mind, he immediately calls the production crew. Soon, a yacht speeds across the lake. Jacques has realized a lot during this time. From a tragic childhood to now being self-sufficient, and then building this happy little family. Compared to endless money, the people before him are what truly matter. Not wanting to leave any regrets in his youth, he finally exits the challenge via a small boat. Returning to day 12, judging by Jesse's logging progress, the scale of the shelter should be quite large. Before the foundation is even finished, it starts raining cats and dogs. Even so, this doesn't extinguish his desire to move into a mansion. He chooses a spot on a steep slope. The next task is to level the ground. Using wood as a digging stick, he digs away the excess soil and fills it into the gaps down the slope. Just for a piece of flat ground, he wastes quite a few calories. Once finished, he carries over 3 more tree trunks weighing nearly 100 pounds in total. Going to such great lengths without a stable food source, one really worries about his condition by the time the villa is completed. That will be the day he quits. Using for large trees as pillars, binding for crossbeams, arranging several logs neatly for the roof. It took most of the day. The basic frame is mostly complete. The camera cuts to Igor. For lunch, he cooks a meal of boiled seaweed. It tastes like the fragrance of solo. The texture is crispy. So far, he hasn't hunted any protein. He has been on a vegetarian diet. He has lost 17 jin, about 8.5 kilograms. But that doesn't dampen his determination to build the cabin. After eating until he's 80% full, he continues. He goes nearby to collect wood. Considering the frequent strong winds in the area, ensuring warmth is particularly important. He fells the trees and uses an axe to peel the bark. The entire area is like a sponge soaked in water. Once it rains, the damp ground squishes water out when stepped on. Because of this, Igor uses peeled logs to lay the floor. The simplest mortise and tenon joints are used for the cabin frame. It looks easy through the screen, but the workload can only be described as grueling. After working for several hours, progress is still less than 10%. Night has fallen again, just as he's worrying about dinner. The sound of a grouse is heard nearby. He takes his saw to search for it. With 2 quick cracks, when he reappears, he is suddenly holding a plump grass. This is just beyond absurd. Absolutely ridiculous. Being meticulous, he puts on gloves. He cleans out the internal organs. He cooks it until it's crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. He takes big bites of genuine chicken flavor. The protein content is unknownly higher than that of beef. Time moves to day 13. Adam finds a pile of clay around the camp. He packs it and brings it back to camp. He grabs some withered grass from the ground, chops it up with an axe, mixes it with the clay. This is a most traditional building material. Many mud houses in the village use this exact technique. However, Adam plans to use it to build a fireplace. First, he uses willow branches to prop up a wooden frame. Then he applies layers upon layers of clay. While he's busy, he hears the footsteps of a grouse outside. Having lost 2 arrows previously, he's developed a psychological shadow. He uses a piece of wood as a throwing stick. The result is self-evident. He didn't even catch a single feather. Fortunately, he can still rely on fishing to survive. After building the smoke vent, the entire fireplace is complete. He goes inside and lights the fire to physically dry it out. It should be noted that being too hasty can easily cause cracking. Seeing that the smoke ventilation is good, his hard work has paid off. Before starting work, Jesse goes to the berries he relies on for survival. After a few handfuls, he refills his carbohydrates. He has lost 13 jin since the start, a terrifying rate of 1 jin per day. To alleviate this, he takes word to set traps around the area. Utilizing the squirrel's habit of climbing poles and taking shortcuts, he sets up a wide net of traps. After finishing, he finds a nearby spot to rest for a moment. As the chattering of squirrels nearby decreases, Jesse sets off to check the traps. Upon arriving at the first spot, he can hardly believe it. There really is a rich supply of resources. He brings the sleeping Jerry squirrel to the shore, cleans out the internal organs, puts it in an iron pot and braises it over high heat for 30 minutes. The first meal in 2 weeks. He gulps down the protein. He almost wants to crunch the bones too. Time moves to day 14. Before the sun has even risen, he is so captivated by the scenery that he has no desire to sleep. This scene reminds him of the saying, "Don't go out during morning glow, but travel 1,000 miles during evening glow." The weather in Labrador is unpredictable. The construction of a permanent shelter cannot be delayed any further. At dawn, He finds a flat clearing in the jungle. Uses existing large trees as the frame. Binds a crossbeam at the front and back. To increase stability, he reinforces both sides with a log. He spreads a waterproof tarp over it. In a few quick steps, a breezy, open hut is finished. Lying inside is incredibly comfortable. Just then, the sound of a squirrel reaches his ears. Protein delivered to the door. Don't blame him for being impolite. He stealthily finds the target's position with his bow and arrow. Aims. One shot. Crack. A second later, he has a plump one in his hand. After thanking nature for the gift, he returns to can and stir-fries it over low heat until it's 90% cooked. Smelling the aroma, even he, who usually doesn't eat organs, can't resist trying. My goodness, it tastes like the whole periodic table. He has lost 17 jin since the start. As life gradually stabilizes, he believes he'll be able to gain it back soon. Another sunny day. Jesse is full of energy. He dives back into the construction of the shelter. He doesn't pursue any particular style. As long as it's sturdy and warm, that's better than anything fancy. Looking at the ever-increasing amount of construction timber, without 10 years of experience in civil engineering, an ordinary person would find it hard to make it this messy, yet somehow orderly. He drives a dozen stakes into the back wall of the shelter. He collects bark to fill the gaps. He's exhausted and out of breath. Progress is still less than half. On the other side, one is holding his hunting gear. With a solemn expression, he aims at a distant squirrel and fires a shot. Unsurprisingly, he missed by a mile. After spending so many days in Labrador, aside from hunting a grouse on the 4th day, he hasn't had any protein since. While searching everywhere for food without success, he discovers a fresh black bear. The footprint is about the size of Juan's palm. He estimates the bear weighs at least 360 jin 180 kilograms. It would be a lie to say he isn't afraid, but considering they are the trump cards to change the tide of the game. Back at camp, a sudden idea struck. Putting the leftover scraps and organs into a tin can. Taking advantage of a bear's keen sense of smell. Creating a set of bell-triggered traps. Once triggered, it would immediately alert them, so that Juan could deliver the fatal blow at the first opportunity. Time moves to day 15. Having tasted the sweetness of fishing, Adam decided to expand this endeavor. Removing the foam insoles, preparing to process a few more sets of lures, tearing them with brightly colored nylon rope, tying on the hooks and lines. In a short time, he finished a lure shaped like an ant. The food reserves were almost exhausted. His stomach wouldn't stop growling. Bringing the gear back to the old spot. Starting the usual fishing routine. The clear river water reflected the blue sky and white clouds. This scene could only be described as absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, no matter how beautiful, it couldn't fill his stomach, leaving Adam no time to appreciate it. He kept casting the line, persisting for over an hour. Whether it was past the feeding time or a problem with his technique, he grew tired to the point of exhaustion. The lure was lost. He didn't even catch a single feather. But Adam was not discouraged. He performed a passionate dance to cheer himself up. The camera moves to Carrie. Boiling a pot of water to wash her dry and dull skin. Feeling refreshed, she continued. The construction of the shelter. The site was chosen on a ridge exposed to the wind. Leveling the ground through a bit of digging. Piling the excavated soil under the pillars to stabilize the frame. Then spreading the waterproof tarp over the top. Although not luxurious, it had no problem providing shelter from the wind and rain. Lighting the fire at night. In this moment, the lonely wilderness felt the warmth of home. Time moves to day 16. Having lost 2 arrows, and failing to catch any wild pheasants, Adam spent every spare moment practicing his archery, boosting his morale by repeatedly hitting the bullseye. While searching around, he found a few porcini mushrooms. They looked ugly but were rich in trace elements. He packed them up for dinner. Then he took his bow and arrow to scout the jungle. His requirements weren't high. He would be satisfied if he could last 75 to 80 days. As he walked, he heard a nose nearby. Holding his breath, he drew the bow fully and unleashed a deadly arrow. The camera shifts. A plump large grouse lay on the ground. Man, after suffering for so many days, he finally felt vindicated. Back at camp, he plucked the feathers, stuffing the chicken's belly with plenty of cranberry jam. Teared with the porcini mushrooms. Cooking a proper dish of chicken stew with mushrooms. After half an hour, the feast, charred on the outside and tender on the inside, was ready. Cutting a piece. Tasting it with great appetite. Perfectly crispy. The taste of chicken mixed with the sour and sweet flavor of cranberries. A crispy skin. It was so delicious that it could only be described as oh my god. The protein content is dozens of times higher than that of beef. The camera moves to this contestant. Not only are his hunting skills superb, but his fishing is also top-notch. Whenever he goes out, he catches fish every single time. Several wild pheasants. He had so much fish that he even built a cold storage pond to keep them. He took his bow and arrow and strolled around, accidentally discovering a beaver's footprint. Compared to pheasants and grouse, this was the largest protein source found so far. It was as if he saw $500,000 waving at him. He quickly began to track it, Soon he noticed movement in the river ahead. Without a second thought, he drew the bow fully. Predicting the position, he released a deadly arrow. Unexpectedly, it missed by a few centimeters to the right. Just as he was frustrated that the protein had slipped away, he found another one just around the corner, one step away. Dealing with a stationary target, his arrow never missed. The ripples of water proved it had hit. But when he reached the spot to retrieve it, good heavens, it had miraculously vanished. He was completely baffled by this. Could it have escaped through a beaver tunnel? Unwilling to give up just like that, he tracked it all the way from the tributary to the main river. If he lost this, his peers would laugh themselves to death. Time moves to day 17. 9 contestants remain in the game. Thinking about the wounded beaver that got away, he couldn't sleep all night. Before dawn, he dressed and went out again to find it. Moving forward along the riverbank, based on his years of wilderness experience, it should be nearby. He searched everywhere, leaving only the tiny gaps in the bushes. With a last-ditch effort attitude, he took a close look. My goodness, he actually found a dark, fuzzy fellow. Only, when he lifted it did he realize how heavy it was. It weighed roughly 45 jin, about 22.5 kilograms. Eating sparingly, he could last a month without a problem. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but let out a joyful howl, dragging the prey to a swamp far from the camp. He took out his knife to clean the organs. Luckily, the current temperature was not high. Normally, it would have spoiled after one night. The camera moves to Temujin. After a few days of hard work, the insulation and warmth issues of the shelter were finally resolved. To date, he has lost 20 jin, 10 kilograms. Lying on the bed, he could clearly feel his ribs. This cannot continue. He went out for a stroll, finding the area riddled with squirrel holes of all sizes. Looking at the scattered pine cones on the ground, judging by the bite marks, it was almost certainly the work of squirrels. Seeing this, Temujin decided to set up traps, using string to tie pine saplings as springs, carving a 7-shaped notch into the wooden sticks, hooking them together in opposite directions, using pine cones as bait, using wire to balance the snare. Once triggered, it would immediately tighten and lock the prey. It seemed sophisticated, but for a squirrel, it was truly overkill. It would have been better to set snares at the holes or on tree trunks, which would more effectively utilize his strong handicraft skills. Back at the camp, he quickly built a 2-tier smoker, considering that moisture easily breeds bacteria, and worrying that the smell of blood might attract black bears. The best method is to dry out the moisture through smoking. Hang up the beaver, skillfully peel off the fur coat, cut the meat into strips, remove the 2 ribs cleanly with a crisp snap, tack them and lay them neatly on the rack. Then, ignite a roaring fire. Soon, thick smoke can be seen emerging. Finally, block the entrance with branches. Now, just wait. In the blink of an eye, night falls. Back at the camp, stir-fry it in the pot. 10 minutes later, it's 80 to 90% cooked. Can't wait to take a big bite, both crispy and fatty. The taste is almost like the Bull Demon King. In this scene, with another glass of vodka, it's no different from being on vacation. The protein content is likely dozens of times that of beef. Time comes to day 18. Early morning, the host makes authentic raspberry berry tea. After a few sips, Temujin feels his whole body filled with power. Sour, sweet, and full of carbohydrates. Eating only vegetarian food makes it hard to achieve a balanced nutritional mix. So, all hope is pinned on the traps. The chattering of squirrels can be heard everywhere in the jungle. Despite wandering for so many days, he hasn't successfully caught any. Carrying an axe, he picks a few dead trees for heating materials. While busy working, he hears the sound of flapping wings. Looking up, it turns out to be a flying pheasant. Temujin rushes back to the camp. He grabs his hunting gear and immediately returns the way he came, sneaking around, searching for the silhouette of protein. Little guy, thinking you're safe just by hiding in a tree. Target found. Drawing the bow to full, he aims and lets fly a powerful arrow. Unsurprisingly, it's a hit. Unfortunately, it gets caught in the dense branches while falling. He grabs a stick and pokes around. The grouse falls to the ground, complaining. With 2 bang-bang physical liberations, it reluctantly says goodbye to the beautiful world. Looking at the gift of nature, Temujin feels a sense of relief. He doesn't even try to hide wiping the drool from his mouth. Heading to the nearest shore, he removes the grouse's coat. He puts the meat on a stick for charcoal grilling. This scene reminds him of the days he spent eating barbecue with the Maasai. In 10 minutes, the aroma fills the entire camp. Famished, he takes big bites. Man, it's crispy and tastes like genuine chicken. It's the most sumptuous meal he's had since coming to Labrador. He sleeps until noon. This ghost of a place is both cold and damp. Shivering, Igor gets up to warm up first. He had no experience building a wooden house. Only after actually doing it did he realize how daunting it was. He's constantly dealing with logs weighing dozens or hundreds of pounds. After a few days, his back and waist are aching. As of now, his weight has dropped by 22 jin. His exhausted muscles and bones feel refreshed. Taking advantage of the bright sunshine, he brings a fishing rod to the river to catch wild crucian carp. Before the challenge, Igor was full of confidence, but when truly placed in the wilderness, he realized his experience was insufficient. He cast the line 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but no fish took the bait. Just when he thought there were no fish, a seal happened to pass by. A glimmer of hope appeared in his cold heart. He picks a relatively deep spot along the shore. Time passes minute by minute. He cast the rod so much his arm almost dislocated. He didn't even catch a fish scale. Only then did Igor give up the idea of eating fish. It seems he can only continue to enjoy the seafood feast. The good news is that after so many days, he finally found a shellfish. He uses a fire starter to ignite the stove. He fills the iron pot with seaweed and places it on top to boil. No spring onions, ginger, or garlic at all. Once it boils, the feast is officially served. With one bite of the shellfish, Igor feels his whole being ascending. The first bite of meat in 18 days, that kind of taste. You can't appreciate it unless you've experienced 9 meals of hunger in 3 days. He wished he could just crunch through the shell as well. Tired of living in the crude shack, Tom also began building a wooden house. Judging by the scale, the difficulty should be quite high. His body fat reserves were already low. Before starting the hard work, he took his bow and arrow out to find some calories. Not far after walking out, he spotted an old burr. Along with the sound of the bowstring, when it reappeared, he had an extra piece of protein in his hand. Considering this thing has pitifully little meat, an unsatisfied Tom went to the shore. He used hair to make a fly fishing rake. Waving the fishing rod, he entered fishing mode. The reason he has this level of skill today is entirely due to the experience he gained while adventuring in South Africa with his father as a child. Continuously changing positions, he found the area where the fish gathered. Before long, he attracted a greedy trout. He hauled it ashore. Man, it's not small at all. Full of fat, enough for a hearty meal. Back at the camp, he grilled it over charcoal. After waiting for half an hour, the fragrant grilled fish was ready. Tom enjoyed it with great gusto. The freshness of the fish filled his mouth. Tender and delicious. The protein content is likely many times that of beef. The camera moves to Benji's side. He couldn't bear to waste the remaining beaver innards. He paired them with accumulated fish innards to make a secret sauce. He set up a stick nearby, tied the camera to it, to see what large predators live in the vicinity. If he had the chance to tame one, and make it to the final circle, wouldn't it be as easy as a vacation? Time comes to day 19. You wouldn't know if you didn't look, but you'd be shocked once you did. It really did attract. A bear came for food and sat in front of the camera, eating with great relish. As a bear hunter, one wonders what Benji would think seeing this scene. As a refined beau, he must pay attention to dental care even in the wilderness. He crushed charcoal to use as toothpaste. Used his finger as a toothbrush, scrubbing everything front, back, inside, and out until clean. Then he took a sip of 82 vintage plain boiled water to rinse his mouth. Considering that charcoal is good for the stomach, he swallowed it directly, solving the breakfast problem at the same time. Looking at the wooden cabin, which was less than halfway finished, Igor couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't understand the point of spending massive calories to build a mansion. It completely contradicted the principles of survival. However, the arrow was already on the string, and he had no choice but to let it fly. He continued to fell logs with his saw. From his listless movements, it wasn't hard to see that he was reaching his limit. Of course, going home was just a phone call away. Unconsciously, the seeds of quitting began to take root and sprout. It wasn't until a sharp pain shot through his back again that Igor stopped to rest for a moment, feeling the thumping of his heart in his chest. Clearly, long-term hunger combined with physical labor had led to cardiac arrhythmia. Leaving it unattended could even be life-threatening. Thinking of this, he suddenly fell into a dilemma. On the other side, Terry's situation was equally bad. From the start until now, he had only caught one wild crucian carp. Dizziness and vertigo set in, and he looked completely lifeless. In the middle of the day, he just wanted to crawl into his shelter to recover. As a result, halfway through his nap, both legs cramped uncontrollably. Worse still, stomach spasms followed. Just when it seemed this kid was about to throw in the towel and run, he suddenly felt refreshed. It turned out that the constipation that had plagued him for 13 days was finally resolved. Feeling reborn, Terry found a reason to keep persevering. Time jumped to the 20th day. Igor woke up in his crude shelter. This experience had dealt a significant blow to both his body and spirit. He stretched his muscles to relieve the soreness in his back. Breakfast was the same as usual, boiling a full pot of elements from the periodic table. He stared blankly at the nutritionless seaweed, lost in thought. Given the current progress, he was clearly no match for the others. After several large gulps, his already terrible mood was made even more gloomy by the rain. Rather than staying and wasting away his health, it would be better to return to his family sooner. Having made up his mind, he immediately called the production team. Shortly after, a yacht sailed across the lake. Several people quickly arrived at the camp. Out of responsibility for himself and his family, He withdrew from the challenge before his health completely collapsed. After all, with his amateur skills, no matter how long he held on, he could never compete with the wilderness experts. Time jumped to the 21st day. Unexpectedly, having discovered beavers at the start, he dreamed of them with drool running down his chin. Before the sun had even risen, he took his hunting gear to the place where they often appear. They usually forage in the early morning or evening. By the time it reached 7 a.m., a beaver finally appeared on the lake. Terry hid behind the camera, drew his bow to full tension and aimed. He released a cloud-piercing arrow. Judging by the accuracy, it was undoubtedly a 100% hit. With an excited heart and trembling hands, just as he stepped forward to retrieve it, the little rascal used its remaining strength to escape into the lake. How could protein that was already in his mouth be allowed to slip away? There was no time to find another way. Terry stripped off his warm clothes, and with a surge of adrenaline, dove into the bone-chilling water. If he tripped and his calves cramped, or if he encountered a giant creature, the only thing awaiting him would be his final meal. He reached the beaver with his heart in his throat. Terry didn't dare linger. He grabbed the beaver and ran back. Upon reaching the shore, his anxious heart finally settled. With no time to celebrate, he quickly put on dry clothes. After suffering for so many days, he finally had a moment of triumph. Time jumped to the 21st day. There were 8 contestants remaining. Instead of sleeping in the middle of the night, Den came over to check the cameras. He didn't know until he looked, but after seeing the footage, his adrenaline spiked. A greedy black bear had actually visited. As a bear hunting expert, the large knife in his hand was already itching for action. Considering the current temperature was still above freezing, he decided to wait a while longer before capturing one for a feast. Time jumped to the 22nd day. After waking up from a sound sleep, having lived in a well-ventilated makeshift shed, Den realized this was not a long-term solution. When it drops to -20 or 30 degrees, a ton of firewood would be spent just to keep warm. Therefore, a cold-proof, warm shelter was essential. He took his axe to collect logs nearby, planning to build a conical shelter. This is a common construction method used by nomadic tribes in extreme cold. It would be no problem to walk upright inside. After finishing the frame, he laid a waterproof tarp over it. As for the gaps at the bottom, they could simply be plugged with branches. It didn't take long, and a warm, improved shelter was completed. The camera moves to Jesse. He was preparing to continue building his mansion when he accidentally discovered a nesting grouse. Carrying his hunting gear, he crept up, drew his bow, and shot. Unsurprisingly, he didn't even hit a single feather. Seeing that meat was out of reach, he poured his energy back into the house. He hauled back over a dozen logs. Despite the impressive scale, Jesse hadn't eaten much. From the start until now, he had survived on just 2 squirrels and some berries. His powerful will to endure hunger far exceeded that of the other contestants. On the other side, Adam's luck finally turned. In the middle of the day, he landed a lethal shot, a chirping little bird. It seemed the hunting skills he practiced during this time hadn't been in vain. Just as he was about to head back, another one appeared in front of him, seemingly unafraid of death. As the saying goes, meeting is fate. Without a word of warning, he sent another cloud-piercing arrow its way. A second later, 2 birds were lying there neatly. He thought his luck ended there, but the sound of a squirrel calling reached his ears again. Exterminating everything was not Adam's style. It was better to leave some as reserves for tomorrow and the day after. Returning to camp, he cleaned out the organs. At this moment, Adam felt like he was back on top. The meat was charred black on the outside and burnt inside, teared with leftover grouse and bright red berries. With both meat and vegetables, his life felt no different from being on vacation. Compared to the other contestants, Juan's survival strategy can only be described as simple and crude. If he can drink raw water, he will absolutely not boil it. After all, gathering firewood is a strenuous physical task. Being Mexican, he has maintained this habit for 10 years. Over time, his body has long since developed antibodies. Up until now, he has been living on berries, eating well one day and starving for the next 3. Based on his years of experience with hunger, relying on capturing grouse and wild rabbits won't be enough to last until the end. Aside from large predators and wild chickens, fish are the only way out. To play the long game for a big catch, Juan utilized his handicraft skills. He made a wooden support and placed it underwater. Then he laid a few logs on top. In a few quick moves, he built a simple fishing pier. Barring any accidents, he will soon strike it rich in food. Time skips to day 23. As the shelter facilities gradually improve, it's time for Kali to consider the food problem. Armed with a bow and arrow, Kali enters hunting mode. The paths in the jungle are steep and complex. One must be extremely vigilant while trekking. After wandering around, searching for grouse, he suddenly heard the chirping of Jerry beneath his feet. Without a word, he shot a piercing arrow. As the sound abruptly stopped, Kali thought he had hit the mark. But when he went to retrieve it, he couldn't find so much as a single feather. Good grief, after hunting for so many years, how could he let the prey slip away right under his nose? After a long while without finding Jerry's silhouette, Kali reluctantly accepted this reality. Compared to other contestants, who spent Herculean effort building huts, Tom focused on efficiency. He used a few logs to build the shelter frame, leaving enough space for sleeping. He collected stones and clay from the stream to build a fireplace. Then he spread a waterproof tarp over it. Before long, a weatherproof hut was finished. As for the details of the walls, they could be perfected slowly. Knowing his body fat reserves were insufficient, he would go hunting with his gear whenever he had time. He also checked the traps set along the way. The first two were completely untouched. Just when he thought he'd be returning empty-handed again, a joyful cheer erupted from him. Approaching, he saw a wild rabbit practicing pull-ups in a trap. Tom was so excited, he became incoherent. Tired of fish and grouse, he could finally change his palate. He packed it up and returned quickly to camp. Using a knife, he skillfully removed the pelt. The connective tissues seemed hard to deal with, but after boiling them over high heat, they became a rare meat jelly once cooled. He chopped the meat into pieces and put them in the pot, simmering on low heat for an hour. The aroma began to spread. Tom couldn't wait to enjoy it. My goodness, this is proper protein. The calories must be many times that of beef. Even while enduring hunger, nothing could stop Cully's optimistic spirit. While freezing rain fell outside, she sang songs by the fire inside. Since hunting wasn't working, she decided to catch some wild crucian carp for a treat, taking her flying eagle fishing rod to the nearby shore. She estimated it was the fish's feeding time. Less than 5 minutes after casting, there was movement. Because the fish didn't take the hook properly, it broke free before she could pull it ashore. Seeing hope, Cully tried again. On the fourth cast, she felt a heavy weight on the line, an excited heart, and trembling hands. Having lost one already, she couldn't let this one get away no matter what. She quickly hauled it in for the second time. My goodness, the size is actually quite impressive. Measuring it with her hands, it was over 40 centimeters. After thanking nature for the gift, she returned to camp and stir-fried it until nearly cooked. Famished, Cully took a bite, her mouth filled with the taste of fish. She wondered how many times higher the protein content was compared to beef. Time skips to day 24. With his newly crafted fishing rod, Juan officially entered fishing master mode. Up until now, he hadn't tasted meat. Every cell in his body craved a protein boost. After persisting for a short while, the hook felt a tug, just as it seemed to be 1 step away from the shore. The fish performed a dragon's tail flick and dove back into the river. Juan was not discouraged. He continued casting, since it was the fish's feeding time. A second fish soon followed. To keep it brief, without further ado, the first fish followed the old rule. The old baby partner, companion eats first. Following that, his luck was like luck's mother opening the door for luck. His luck became uncontrollable. Schools of fish scrambled to take the bait. Completely satisfied, he counted the catch. Exactly 6 fish. He used a fire starter to light a blaze on the shore. No scallions, ginger, or garlic were added. He boiled them in the pot for 21 minutes, mixed with berries. It looked mouth-watering. Juan took large bites, the delicious fish aroma reaching the crown of his head. It was so tasty that oh my god wasn't enough to describe it. As a qualified survival expert, not a single calorie was wasted. Using an axe, he felled a tree, found an open space, and built a simple rendering workstation. In his eyes, every bit of fat was precious. He used a beaver tail as a platter, and soon it was filled to the brim. Returning to camp, he boiled it over high heat in the iron pot. Once cooled, he had half a pot of solid fat. It must be said, whether in hunting, fishing, or food stockpiling, he is already far ahead of the other contestants. He didn't even waste the leftover cracklings, eating them as a small snack. Empty. End of section. Grab a bite anytime, anywhere whenever hungry. With these food reserves, lasting another month will be no problem. I stepped out for a stroll with an excited heart. A spruce grouse was perched on a treetop, watching the scene. Before I could even move, it flapped its wings and dove into the brush. Since it's already here, I must naturally extend some host's hospitality for this episode. Drawing the bow to full tension, I shot it down with a single arrow. I have to say, once a person's luck arrives, nothing can stop it. Arriving at the riverbank, I cleaned out the internal organs. I couldn't bring myself to throw away the heart, liver, spleen, or lungs. Returning to camp at night, I plucked all the feathers. I put the skin and meat into the pot to stir-fry, added an appropriate amount of beaver fat. 5 minutes later, a high-energy dish of stir-fried diced chicken was ready. I hurried to taste it, an authentic chicken flavor. 1 bite and my whole mouth was filled with oil. The calorie count is likely many times that of beef. Now it's day 25. Adam is as listless as a frostbitten eggplant. Last night, his stomach suddenly felt like it was turning upside down. Unless something unexpected happens, something is definitely wrong. He wasn't sure which pathogen he had been infected with. He just wanted to lie in bed chewing on sweet and sour cranberries. He refused to quit unless it became absolutely necessary. He spent the long, boring time doing some handicrafts. In the blink of an eye, night fell. The situation had not improved in the slightest. His feelings at this moment told him that he might be infected with Giardia. Even so, Adam did not intend to give up. He hoped his strong immune system could help him clear the obstacle. Now it's day 26. The situation in this episode is equally bleak. His abdomen had a persistent, slight bloating pain. There wasn't much he could do to alleviate it. Just to try, he performed a round of Baoduan and Qigong exercise. After finishing, he felt refreshed in spirit, but the symptoms showed no substantial improvement. Next, he searched nearby for a herb called che grass. If he guessed correctly, it might be related to eating too much meat and fish recently. He lit a fire right there on the riverbank. He put the che grass in an iron pot with water and boiled it. Regardless of the risk, he gulped down several large mouthfuls. If the gastrointestinal problem isn't solved, he has no heart for hunting in this episode. Lying in his sleeping bag under the sun, he enjoyed leisure time that was both painful and pleasant. Sitting around in camp waiting for the end wasn't an option. Adam planned to go out and look for birch trees. In the eyes of survivalists, they are treasure troves. He picked a lush tree in the mountains and used his knife to peel off the tender inner bark. It is said that drinking the decoction can stimulate and soothe the stomach. Trying it for the first time, he wasn't sure about the dosage. Nor did he know what the effect would be, but compared to quitting the challenge, Adam had to treat this as his last hope. As night fell, the bark juice was freshly made. After a few large gulps, whether he can pull through depends on tonight. Now it's day 27. In the early morning, his stomach was churning violently. It left him feeling miserable all over. Vomiting and fever set in. The symptoms were identical to a Giardia infection. The more he had enjoyed the food before, the more agonizing it was now. Tossing and turning all night, he suffered until 6 a.m. Games are games, but if the body breaks down, no amount of money can buy interest back. He immediately called the production team. Not wanting to delay a moment, they set off in a small yacht. They arrived at the camp just as dawn broke. After explaining the cause and effect, he was given a cup of hot boiled water. From this, it can be seen that, no matter how powerful one's survival skills are, they are insignificant in the face of nature. Now it's day 28. 7 contestants remain. Terry is practically living the high life. He started his day munching on fragrant oyster ribs. With several thousand calories in his stomach, preserving food became an urgent matter. After all, food spoils easily if left too long in a humid environment. He cut the meat into irregular strips, tacked them, and took them to the mini smokehouse. He tied wires to wooden sticks to make meat racks. He hung the pieces up neatly. The pink, tender color made one drool just looking at it. Then he transferred the fire, and the meat racks were smoked. He sealed the top with wood, and waited quietly for a few hours. Meanwhile, Tom lived in a luxurious gourd-style shelter, using wires, spruce grouse feathers, and rabbit fur. He meticulously crafted a pair of earrings. He hoped his little girlfriend would like them. Once finished, he went out to check the traps. No matter where he went, it was best to carry his hunting gear. That way, he wouldn't regret it if he encountered prey. Despite eating large amounts of meat and soup every day, Tom could still clearly feel his weight dropping. He had to find a way to control it. After a round of checks, he hadn't caught so much as a hair in the traps. Moving forward, he accidentally discovered a beaver trail. Not far away was a beaver dam. Its discovery instantly gave Tom hope. Catching one would be enough to splurge for a week. Considering those creatures are nocturnal, he decided to come back later to try his luck. Hearing Jerry's shouting from the camp, Tom finally reached his limit. If he didn't teach them a lesson, they would think he was a pushover. He picked a few sticks, teared them with stones, used acorns as bait, and constructed a set of capture traps. Just as he finished, he heard the sound of flapping wings. Without further ado, and without wasting words, his 40-meter recurve bow was already itching for action. After trekking a short distance, he spotted the target. Little rascal, you thought hiding on the ground could escape the hunter's eye. He aimed and fired, but it was a complete miss. Good grief, to miss by just a step. As a survival expert, he felt he had completely lost face. He picked up the arrow, searching for the other person's silhouette again. Drawing the bow to full stretch, another swift arrow flies. Not only did he fail to hit a single feather, but the arrow vanished into thin air. According to the challenge rules, each contestant can carry a maximum of 9 arrows. Every lost arrow reduces their chances of winning. Following the trajectory, he found it stuck in a tree next to the shelter. He grabbed a stick and tried to poke it down. Unfortunately, it was too high. The result was not ideal. He had to resort to Morgan's special move, climbing up bit by bit. The height was around 6 meters. Just as he was about to reach it, suddenly, oh my goodness, T-Muzzin broke into a cold sweat. It wouldn't be worth it if he got injured. Such a stupid mistake. He didn't want to experience a second time. Day 29 arrives. Before dawn, Tom woke up early, preparing for the hunt. Before his food reserves ran out, he intended to keep persisting with the beaver hunt. He went to a pitch-black shore, blending into the bushes with his gear, waiting quietly. An hour passed unknowingly, and day broke. Tom crept closer stealthily. At first glance, he saw nothing. But then, oh my. He was stunned to find a beaver actually bathing in the river, completely unaware of the approaching danger. Since that was the case, Tom didn't hold back. Seizing the moment, he fired a surprise shot from behind. Based on the splash and the trajectory of the arrow, he was 100% certain it was a hit. But unfortunately, the beaver dove into the water and vanished. Tom muttered a sort of prayer, asking the animal to show some mercy and surface as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, half the day passed without so much as a single bubble. He guessed it had most likely dove back into its burrow. There was no better way than to wait, watching that protein slip away. That feeling, like having a bone stuck in one's throat. For a hunter, this is more agonizing than hunger. Rather than this, Tom would have preferred to have missed the shot. 24 hours passed. Terry came to check the smoking process, lifting the wooden poles, seeing the meat charred on the outside and tender on the inside. He was so happy he could barely speak. Although the equipment was crude, the effect was surprisingly good. Now Bengbing no longer had to worry about spoilage. Eating sparingly would be enough. He persisted for half a month, using the same method, smoking some of it, and cooking some of it, as his daily meals. A mixture of fat and lean meat. It looked incredibly appetizing. Fried, until charred on the outside, and dark inside. He feasted on it, tasting the crispy and fragrant meat, rich in oil. The calorie content was dozens of times higher than that of beef. The rest was deep fried, until blackened, then simmered with water for 49 minutes, creating a delicious, rich soup. With one gulp, his mouth was full of fat. Every cell in his body felt nourished. Day 30 arrives. As the current leading hunger expert on the field, Jesse relied entirely on drinking cold water to feel full. Now that the structure of the cabin was complete, all that remained was to collect scraps, to fill up the walls. Little did he know that squandering energy without limit would only accelerate his elimination from the competition. Since the fishing pier was built, the diet on the lakeshore had significantly improved. For lunch, he had fish head, berries, and meat jelly. Bouncy and refreshing. One couldn't help but drool just watching it through the screen. As long as his stomach didn't act up, hunger was no longer an issue. Treasure Blue continued to catch wild crucian carp with his rod. After just 2 casts, something went wrong. A crack appeared in the rod he relied on for survival. Fortunately, it wasn't a big deal. He wrapped it tightly with rope, and its strength remained as before. He continued casting from the pier, whether the fish weren't there or the timing was wrong. After persisting for an hour, not a single fish had bitten. Not wanting to waste time, Juan switched to hunting mode with his bow and arrow. After searching for a while, he spotted a grouse perched in a tree. Before he could strike, it slipped deep into the alley. He followed it all the way, and found it hiding on the ground. He didn't hesitate. Drawing the bow to full stretch, he fired a swift arrow. It looked like a hit, but when he ran forward to retrieve it, only an arrow covered in feathers remained. His plan to improve his diet failed once again. What upset Juan more was that he couldn't give the grouse a quick death. This is the worst possible outcome for a hunter. Then the camera shifted to T. Muzzin. With a single swift arrow, one grouse met its scent. He thought his luck had run out, but another fearless bird blocked his path. Without a word, he fired another surprise shot. Upon retrieving it, he found this one even plumper than the last. 2 catches in one day, something he wouldn't have dared dream of normally. He began to love this auspicious piece of land. Just as he was returning home happily loaded, wait, the sound of flapping wings came from ahead, followed by the sound of a bow being drawn and released. The result was predictable. My goodness, it must be said that once a person is on a lucky streak, they are simply unstoppable. Bringing them to the shore, plucking the feathers, cleaning out the organs. Next up would be another ruthlessly luxurious wilderness feast. Day 31 arrives. After 2 days of hard work, Jesse's hut is finally topped off. The snow on the mountaintops across the river means winter is not far off. It seems the construction of the shelter needs to be accelerated. Presetting the position for the fireplace, layering cobblestones at the bottom. He brings a waterproof tarp up the mountain to collect materials. Moss is neatly laid on the roof, which will serve as rainproofing and insulation. As of now, his weight has dropped by 27 gin approx. 13.5 kilograms. There is a real worrying that by the time the villa is completed, it will be the day he withdraws from the competition. Once a person eats too full, they definitely won't stay idle. Fearing the smell might attract predators, Temujin plans to build a temporary shelter near the riverbank. It can be used as a lookout and for making smoked meat. He puts massive effort into chopping a tree with a trunk diameter of 7 inches. After felling it, he covers the area with dense maple branches. In a few short steps, the construction of the scraping basin is complete. While cooking smoked chicken, he enjoys the beautiful scenery. If he had a bottle of Harbin beer, this lifestyle would be no different from a vacation. Day 32 arrives. Finally, the moment to move into the new home has come. Jesse has waited a whole month for this day. He thinks it would be wonderful if he could catch a wild chicken to celebrate. Removing the waterproof tarp, He spreads it flat across the roof of the villa. The excess part is used directly as eats. No matter from which angle you look, it can only be described as luxurious. Next, he brings a fishing rod to catch wild crucian carp. Since his skills aren't quite there yet, the local fish give Jesse no respect at all. In the blink of an eye, night falls. Thinking about the lack of protein for the celebration, what does it matter if he lives in a mansion? It only makes him feel more frustrated. Using a fire starter to ignite the hearth, watching the sparks fly upward, he's genuinely worried the hut might burn down. Day 33 arrives. Seeing the squirrels constantly storing food for winter, Quan knows that winter is near. To seize the last hunting opportunity, he takes his bow and an arrow into the jungle. Walking just 5 minutes along an animal trail, he finds a scavenged grass. If he's not mistaken, it probably escaped while wounded. This immediately makes Quan feel irritated. Just then, he spots a white weasel. Though they are small in size, they are not small in courage. It dares to steal food right in front of the hunter. Unable to endure it any longer, he decides to teach it a lesson. A powerful arrow is shot, and in the next second, the weasel lies on the ground as a meal. Day 34 arrives. Even though he eats large mouthfuls of meat and soup, Terry still cannot stop his weight loss. Since the start, he has lost 40 for gin approx. 22 kilograms. It definitely cannot go on like this. Because of this, he can't help but target the subcutaneous fat of the beaver. He is unwilling to waste the remaining fur, so he strings it with wire and puts it in the smokehouse. By draining the moisture, he keeps it dry. As the infrastructure maniac of this episode, Jesse lives a life of eating once and starving for 3 days. The hut is not only windproof and rainproof, but also has a reserve drainage system. With a gentle pull of the rope, he can drink the freshest rainwater every morning. The design is simple and clear, though he doesn't know if it's mixed with bird droppings. After finishing the water reservoir, he continues to improve the shelter's walls. He collects fragments of dry branches and rotten wood to fill the gaps, to make a house that could last 3 generations. The outer layer of the roof is wrapped in sphagnum moss. The warmth and stability are impeccable. In the blink of an eye, night falls. Jesse's luck suddenly turns around. While checking the traps, he finds a caught rodent. He puts it in an iron pot with water to slow stew. Thinking about eating meat soon, the excitement is indescribable. The scene shifts to Terry. He puts the removed beaver fat in an iron pot over high heat. Soon, he gets some crispy fried fat. Crunching away while cooking, the feeling of not having to worry about food is simply wonderful. Whether it's malnutrition or dehydration, Terry's head always feels dizzy and groggy. Day 35 arrives. Adam is chopping wood at the camp early in the morning. Before the log even falls, he's almost caught off guard by a rolling stump. While he is busy and preoccupied, the sound of flapping wings comes from above. He scans the area but finds no sign of a grass. Not caring too much, he continues to swing his ancient axe. Suddenly, a dark shadow flashes behind him. My goodness, it's literally a case of sitting at home and having a chicken drop from the sky. He raises his 40-meter bow and fires a sudden arrow backward. Judging from his excited tone, it's a hit. In the next second, Adam appears on screen with a plump piece of protein. It truly fulfills the old saying, surviving a great disaster brings future blessings. As soon as he speaks, there's movement in the woods behind him again. Since that's the case, don't blame the hunter for being ruthless. Approaching stealthily, accompanied by the sound of drawing and releasing the bow. As expected, another large grouse lies motionless on the ground. After thanking nature for its gifts, the corners of his mouth are curled up in an uncontrollable grin. He then takes them to the shore to clean the organs. Plucking the feathers, he keeps the fat-rich chicken skin. At this moment, Adam feels like he's back in the game. As he returns joyfully, wait a moment. An unknown object on the shore attracts his attention. He takes a look. Wow. It's a dock plank that has been abandoned for who knows how long. According to the rules, contestants can utilize any materials they find. He walks around to get a closer look. Examining it, an ordinary person would probably think of building a boat to fish, or putting up a fishing pier. But in the eyes of Adam, who was born a carpenter, those tasks consume far too much energy, for results that are mediocre at best. Regardless, he dismantles it and takes it back to camp first. He'll consider whether to upgrade the shelter or use it for something else later. It is now day 36. A chill begins to settle in. Tom starts working overtime on the construction of his shelter. He saws a few short wooden boards to support the roof. He blocks the gaps with woven pine branches. It takes a few hours to solve the problem of the shelter being drafty. As of now, he has hunted 15 squirrels and 19 salmon, 5 grouse, 1 wild white rabbit, and countless berries. Although it seems plentiful, it still hasn't stopped his weight loss. Just when he doesn't know what to do, the chattering of a squirrel reaches his ears. He quickly finds the little guy's hiding spot. He draws the bow to full tension and releases a piercing arrow. My goodness, whenever he takes a shot, he never misses. He no longer has to worry about dinner. Moving forward, he discovers a berry patch. He picks a few plump ones to replenish his carbohydrates. As he walks, a hunter's sixth sense tells him there is prey nearby. Tom scans the area. Lo and behold, a wild bird appears to the front right. Without a word, he draws his bow. Taking it by surprise, he lets fly a cold arrow. Gotcha. Isn't it a bit late to struggle now? After it kicks the bucket, he takes a look. It's quite plump. Knowing this is a survival challenge, those who don't know might think he came here to rescue it. Back at camp, he skewers Jerry directly on a stick to charcoal grill. He waits until it's charred black. He scrapes off the surface hair. Compared to skinning, this method keeps it more juicy. After half an hour, the fragrant roasted meat is ready. He feasts on it in large bites. It's crunchy. He wonders how many times more protein chicken has compared to beef. It is now day 37. Hunting was unsuccessful. Callie hasn't been idle either. Before the berries wither, she collects as many as possible. She mashes them into a pulp. Then she simmers them over low heat in an iron pot. She evaporates the water to make it thick. Once wine-dried, it becomes authentic fruit leather. It doesn't spoil easily, and it's rich in carbohydrates. It is now day 39. Ever since hunting the beaver, Terry has either been busy smoking meat or immersed in the joy of eating it. He has no intention of planning for the future. Only when his protein reserves are almost depleted does he take his bow and arrow out to hunt. Unfortunately, time does not turn back. He is forced to take his fishing rod to the shore to try and catch wild birds. Even he cannot figure out why he gets thinner the more he eats. That kind of deep-seated hunger makes him feel dizzy and lightheaded after only a short while. The symptoms are very similar to dehydration. Although the environment is harsh, there is no shortage of water resources. If he's not mistaken, it's related to the beaver fat again. There isn't much of a solution, so he can only take it one step at a time. It is now day 40. Tom is facing the same problem. His body fat reserves were already low. If he loses more weight, he will be forced to withdraw. While he is feeling frustrated, the quacking of a gray duck reaches him, having teased the hunter time and again. If he doesn't teach it a lesson, it will think he's a pushover. Utilizing his strong crafting skills, he makes a bird trap. Once an oblivious bird steps on it, the wooden stick will immediately drop, and the bird will be firmly caught in the snare. He finds an open space to set it up. He searches nearby for a type of moss to use as bait. Not far into his journey, he finds the target on a decaying stump. He packs on and returns the way he came. As a result, he sees the trap trigger from a distance. Unfortunately, he didn't even catch a single feather. Upon inspection, he finds it was because the knot was tied too tight. The camera shifts to Temujin. He is worried about where his dinner will come from. The sounds of squirrels are heard around him. Holding his arrow, he stands ready. The next second, a hopping figure appears. He draws the bow fully and locks on. He delivers a fatal blow. Unexpectedly, after the incident, the three-step battle shows no sign of the prey escaping. Then, a second shot is fired. He suddenly has another piece of protein in his hand. Without further ado, he takes it to the usual spot by the shore for cleaning. Through his experiences during this time, Temujin realizes that the reason he joined the challenge was not entirely for himself. He wants his hardworking mother to be able to live a retired life soon. As for himself, it's merely a matter of quality of life. It is now day 41. For Callie, it is an important day. It is her mother's annual birthday. Since she cannot go home to celebrate, she digs up a piece of moss to use as a cake, as a small token of her filial piety. Afterward, she takes her bow and arrow to check the traps. Perhaps her filial piety moved heaven and earth. Upon checking, lo and behold, there really is a Jerry sleeping in the trap. Tears of gratitude practically flow from the corners of Callie's mouth. Night falls in the blink of an eye. She charcoal grills Jerry until it's crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. After tasting it, the flavor can only be described as delicious. It is now day 42. Having received a notification for a medical checkup, Terry waits in the camp. He lights a roaring fire. He takes off his jacket to check his physical condition, but he didn't know until he looked. After seeing it, he was completely stunned. He has clearly reached the legendary skin and bone state. If this continues, let alone lasting until the end, there is a risk of multi-organ failure at any time. Then, a yacht speeds toward them. A group of people arrive at the camp in grand fashion. Without a word, they first perform a detailed check of his weight, blood pressure, and heart rate. After getting the data, the three of them gather to analyze the pros and cons. A nervous Terry rubs his small hands. As for the result, it goes without saying. Dehydration, fever, and abdominal pain. It is undoubtedly related to a Giardia infection. Playing is playing, but this is serious. You can't joke with your life. After expressing his guilt toward the family and friends who had high hopes for him, he packed his luggage and withdrew from the challenge. The camera now shifts to Tom. Whenever he has time, he handles the trivial details of the camp. Although this log is only as thick as an arm, the tree is 48 years old. To reduce the amount of cold air entering, he built a long corridor at the entrance. As materials ran out, he went to the rear of the shelter to gather saplings. As he exerted force, oh my goodness, his foot slipped, and he fell hard on his back. Luckily, it didn't cause a catastrophic injury. Otherwise, he would have been the next one carried out. But the pain lingered for a long time, scaring Tom into crawling back into his shelter to recover. Now it is day 42. As the fish moved into deeper waters, and the grouse and squirrels disappeared, Collie had no choice but to try hunting muskrats. Fearing she might lose her arrows, she tied the arrow tails to a reel. Once ready, she headed to the river to enter hunting mode. Just as she was zoning out, a dark shadow appeared on the water. Oh my goodness, isn't that the muskrat she's been longing for? Before she could draw her bow and aim, a splash occurred and it dove back underwater. Little guy, who knew you'd be so timid as a mouse? She waited further, and 2 or 3 hours passed. But the river surface remained as calm as a mirror without another ripple. Now it is day 43. After that hard fall, Tom spent the whole night tossing and turning. It would take some time to recover. If he could catch a beaver, he wouldn't have to worry about food. Equipped with his survival gear, he went to ambush the beavers. He waited from the first light of dawn until the sun rose, but for half the day, he didn't see a single soul. He returned to camp to cook a pot of 3 delicacies soup, which was full of carbohydrates. Not having tasted meat for several days made him start to miss it. Once he was about 70% full. Since he had nothing else to do, he looked at the gaps in the fireplace and prepared to fill them with some clay. Whether it was because he was too weak or his foot slipped, Tom took a massive fall onto the ground. It didn't seem too serious, but for someone as skinny as a rail, it was a devastating blow. He struggled to get up and check his injuries, only to find that his knee was swollen. He quickly took out the first aid kit to bandage it. Hearing the mockery of the crows around him, Tom had to accept the reality. Given his current physical condition, he clearly couldn't last much longer. Once he decided, he immediately called the production team. A few people arrived at the camp by yacht. Rather than breaking himself down with an injured body, it was better to withdraw from the challenge with dignity. Thus, supported by the staff, he left the challenge with a bit of regret. Missing one hunting opportunity didn't discourage Collie. Early in the morning, she packed her gear and launched a second attack, learning from her previous carelessness. This time she kept her eyes glued to the water. Before long, she saw bubbles emerging. Collie drew her bow fully and waited. As soon as the target surfaced, she fired a precise cloud-piercing arrow, and without suspense, it hit the mark. She quickly moved forward to retrieve it. After a struggle of 300 rounds, the muskrat was no match for Collie. Look at the size of this thing. It's countless times fattier than a wild rabbit. Back at camp, it was charcoal grilled charred on the outside and tender on the inside. A starving Collie couldn't wait to taste it. Oh my god, the meat is tender and smooth, neither dry nor greasy. The taste is similar to beaver meat. It was the most sumptuous meal she'd had in the wild. Coincidentally, white snow began to fall from the sky. This scene had its own unique charm. The camera shifts to Adam, considering Halloween was approaching. Even in the wild, the sense of ritual couldn't be missing. He glued grouse feathers to his hat, and used a rainproof cloth to make a beak. Mimicking the look of the grouse he relied on for survival. In other words, he hoped to have chicken to eat every day. He didn't waste the boards he brought back, making a chair and reinforcing the shelter's main door. The rest were used to make windows. He nailed wooden strips on both sides as frames, and placed the cupboards on top. The overall warmth of the wooden cabin was immediately and significantly improved. As for Jesse, he had no choice but to be impressed. Since the start, he had survived on 3 Jerry's rabbits and berries. Thanks to his passive ability of enduring hunger, he finally completed the construction of his mansion. But unfortunately, his digestive system acted up again. He had uncontrollable hiccups, and felt nauseous from time to time. Based on the symptoms, there was an 80% chance it was related to a Giardia infection. There wasn't much of a solution. He went to check the status of the traps. He didn't know until he looked, and once he did, his heart sank. The 3 devices hadn't caught a single hair of protein. Since tasting the sweetness of hunting, Genghis T. Muzzin had a turn of luck. With one club, he captured a plump Jerry rabbit. Before it was mealtime, he went out with his bow and arrow to find prey. He hadn't walked 2 miles when he spotted a laying hen grouse to the front left. Without giving the target the warning, he fired a surprise arrow. Judging by his excited tone, it was undoubtedly a hit. He brought the trophy to the camera to show off. His hunting technique is very simple. Don't make eye contact with the prey before striking. Draw the bow fully, and kill it in one shot while it's unaware. After succeeding time and again, Genghis got a bit carried away. He bluntly stated that he wanted to officially take over the challenge. Based on his observations over the past few days, as it gets colder, the wild crucian carp move to deeper waters for the winter. If he wants to continue making a living by fishing, Bone's only option is to extend the pier. Action speaks louder than words. Following the previous construction method, using 2 tripods and a crossbeam, He quickly makes a support. He moves it to the front of the pier, connecting them in the middle with logs. It seems he has only advanced a few meters. But the actual effect is far beyond that. No need for more words. No need for long talks. Let's quickly test the result. My goodness, his hard work really paid off. It didn't take long to attract a greedy fish. With a great start, Juan's luck becomes unstoppable. It just so happens to be the fish's feeding period. They scramble to bite the hook. He easily catches 5 wild crucian carp in one afternoon. He returns to camp to add water and boil them. Unfortunately, looking at the feast in his hands, he has no desire to eat at all. As the discomfort in his stomach gradually intensifies, he retches one after another. Who would have thought that even the Mexican iron stomach would malfunction? Meanwhile, Jesse's situation is also not optimistic. The nausea has not subsided. Even worse, eating meat is still a distant dream. Unable to bear it, he bowls some water to stave off hunger. After one gulp, good grief, he feels even worse after drinking. He tilts his head back, struggling not to throw up. In the end, he can't hold it for a minute before it surges out. He thinks if it could bring back his health, he would rather live in a dilapidated shack. At the end of his rope, Jesse starts eating charcoal, hoping to relieve the discomfort and absorb toxins. Time arrives at day 45. Waking up, Adam feels a strong wave of homesickness. He wishes he could eat delicious meals every time he opens his eyes. To shake off the thought of going home, he takes his bow and arrow to go hunting. His expectations aren't high. He'd be satisfied with a feast. As he walks, he finds a treasure spot backed by mountains and water, a place where beavers love to build their nests. If he had found it earlier, he might already be living a vacation life. Waiting a bit further ahead, he seems to see a wild white rabbit passing by. In a survival state, Adam doesn't care about martial ethics. He draws his bow fully, a powerful shot like a cloud-piercing arrow. The next second, he has a piece of plump protein in his hand. Tired of grouse and wild crucian carp, he had been eager to change the flavor. In the blink of an eye, night falls. He returns to camp, butchers the meat, and puts it in the pot to cook. Not a single piece of onion, ginger, or garlic. After waiting for half an hour, the fragrant roasted meat is ready. He enjoys it with great gusto. It tastes like authentic rabbit meat. Aside from being a bit chewy, all other indicators are top-notch. The calorie content is likely many times that of beef. After the big meal, Adam feels he's back in form. If things continue like this, persisting for another month won't be a problem. The camera shifts to Jesse. A large amount of stomach acid makes him very uncomfortable. He wants to eat but can't. He wants to drink but can't. He has no choice but to crush charcoal and add water as an appetizer. It would be better not to eat. After eating, a primitive force surges out again. 3 times in a row. An ordinary person would have given up and quit long ago, but he never once thought of collapsing. This perseverance is admired even by Ed Stafford. He remains unable to sleep until midnight. Worried about severe dehydration, he gulps down a few more sips of boiled water. His blurry eyes are enough to prove the cruelty of the wilderness. Time arrives at day 46. Seeing that Jesse didn't respond to the scheduled health check, the crew is frightened and rushes over by yacht. Playing is one thing, but they can't watch him gamble with his life. The crew quickly arrives at the camp. He's like a cooked duck trapped, done for. Only his stubbornness remains. Even now, Jesse is still boastful, claiming everything is fine. After that, the 3 of them gather to analyze the seriousness of the situation, advising him that a wise man knows when to quit. If his life is gone, what meaning does all that money have? Finally, supported by the staff, he withdraws from the challenge. Time arrives at day 47. There are 4 contestants left on the field. With the arrival of a new moon phase, the small animals become active again. In just 3 days, the plump squirrels have been exhausted by Collie. Tired of berries, she goes into the jungle to find new prey. After trekking not far, the chirping sounds of squirrels are her great prey delivering itself to the door. She won't let it go. She finds the target's location, draws her bow fully, a powerful cloud-piercing arrow. With a loud clang, the arrow bounces straight back, almost dealing 1,000 damage to the enemy, and 800 to herself. She immediately launches a second attack, but the result is another precise miss. Collie is completely baffled. Where is the problem? Now this is great. No protein captured, and she lost an arrow. Losing one arrow means losing a bit of her chance to win. Following the trail deeper into the thicket, under the interception of dense foliage, she soon discovers the target. Time arrives at day 48. Strong winds howl outside. With an empty stomach, Adam tosses and turns all night. He wakes up and takes his bow and arrow out to forage. Just 2 minutes after leaving, the large trees overhead are roaring with the wind. This undoubtedly increases the difficulty of this hunting trip. Looking at his increasingly wasting body, Adam felt quite helpless. After trekking for an unknown distance, with an unintentional glance, he discovered an arrow was missing. His already slim chances of success decreased further. This was a result he could not accept. He immediately turned back to search for it. As the saying goes, haste makes waste. In his excitement, his foot slipped. Oh my goodness! Not only did he fail to find the arrow, but he also accidentally injured himself. Realizing he had fallen victim to Murphy's Law, Adam took a deep breath to calm his agitated heart. After this incident, he was in no mood to hunt. He returned to camp empty-handed. Little did he know that the seed of withdrawal had been quietly planted in his heart. The camera shifts to Temujin, heading out with an iron pot. He goes to the stream he relies on for survival to get water. Judging by the ice formation, winter is not far off. Then he goes to the surrounding area for his routine foraging. Since the start, his weight has dropped by 39 pounds. His fat reserves are basically exhausted. Just as he was aimlessly searching for prey, 2 fearless squirrels passed right under his nose. Those little guys clearly didn't take him, the hunter, seriously. Spotting them, he immediately fired a sneak attack arrow. Unfortunately, he didn't even touch a single strand of protein fur. It would be better if he hadn't seen the prey. But seeing them and then losing them plunged him into deep self-doubt. The time comes to day 49. White snow covers the entire Labrador region. While cold, it also gives Collie a hunting opportunity. It's time to go out and check the traps. Whether it's because it's too cold and the animals are hibernating indoors, or if the locations were chosen poorly, 5 consecutive spots yielded nothing. It's not easy to make the trip. Since she couldn't catch any protein, she decided to expand the trapping area, setting up a vast network of traps in the vicinity. The time comes to day 50. Seeing that the hope for hunting is slim, Temujin comes up with the idea of setting traps again. Fortunately, he had saved something beforehand. He hadn't thrown away the innards of the inedible grass. He plans to use them as bait to catch a few greedy old birds. First, using the Dragon Slayer tool to drill a hole, he drives a wooden stake into the ground. He cleverly designs a lever mechanism, with a large rock tied to one end. Once the balance is broken, the rope will immediately contract and snare the prey. After adjusting his depressed mood, Adam starts another beautiful day of hunting. For the sake of a protein meal, he prepares to head to a more distant hill to try his luck, silently praying that the heavens would send him one. Just as he finished the thought, he spotted a target. Without a word, he readied his arrow, and immediately sent a cloud-piercing arrow. He rushed forward at full speed, and suddenly had a plump grouse in his hand. Watching the little creature receive its lunchbox die bit by bit, Adam shed crocodile tears. He even felt a bit weary of this life of slaughter. Upon reaching the shore, he plucked the feathers, and cleaned out the innards. Looking at the beautiful scenery before him, the resolve he once had to win the 500,000 began to waver. The camera shifts to Juan. Based on past experience, if no large beasts are caught by this time, hunting is mostly hopeless. Also, since the grouse and squirrels have started wintering, the best way to survive is not to waste a single calorie. He comes to the shore to get some source of life water. Without heating it, he gulps it down in a few breaths. Compared to the food that barely fills the gaps between his teeth, Juan decides to start fasting from this moment, to signal to his body as early as possible that it is in an extreme environment, thereby reducing the mental torture of hunger. Setting a 20-day cycle, if he cannot win the challenge by then, he will have to announce his withdrawal. The time comes to day 51, another sunny day. Standing on high ground, he sees from afar that the river surface has frozen. Knowing well that fishing is now hopeless, he takes out the long-stored fishing rod. After cutting it with an axe, he gets a handy walking stick. If he wants meat, he must rely on traps and hunting. Then he goes to check the trap set a few days ago. Just as he reaches the first one, an unbelievable cheer rings out. The next second, a frozen stiff Jerry prey appears on camera. Looking at its size, it's quite plump. An excited collie almost drools. She puts it in her pocket first, to be processed after thawing back at camp. In the blink of an eye, night falls. Charcoal grilled, crispy on the outside, and tender on the inside. Tasting the fragrant and delicious meat. The authentic taste of barbecue. The protein content is unknown compared to beef. The time comes to day 52. Early in the morning, Temujin uses, or in one go, to process hundreds of snares. As the feeling of hunger gradually intensifies, drawing the bow and shooting is significantly affected. By comparison, traps are more efficient. Just as he finished setting the 99th trap, the cawing of a crow comes from above, which reminds Temujin of the bird traps. He hurriedly walks toward the shore, his heart full of anticipation. He walks quickly to the spot. The good news is he arrived, but the bad news is he didn't see a single bird feather. If he continues to work at this over low and get nothing, the only path left for him will be withdrawal. Just then, white snow begins to fall from the sky. After readjusting the traps, Temujin still holds a longing for a better life. Seeing the thick ice on both banks of the tens of meters odd river, he picks up a pebble to test the ice thickness. If he wants to fish, it seems he will have to wait a bit longer. It wasn't until he took off his jacket that Adam realized how thin he had become. His ribs on both sides were visible to the naked eye. From the first day, he was either hunting or on his way to hunt, eating large mouthfuls of meat and drinking large bowls of soup every day. Coldn single quotes to stop the weight from plummeting. To reverse this trend, the only way was to capture a black bear. Having made up his mind, Adam went out to search for tracks. Unfortunately, his physical condition was far worse than before. He had to stop and rest after every short distance. As time passed, his legs felt as heavy as lead. Clearly, he had reached his physical limit. Sitting on the hilltop, looking at the beautiful scenery, the events of the past 52 days flashed before his eyes. Rather than breaking his body, it would be more dignified to keep his health intact and quit the competition. Upon returning to camp, lo and behold, a spruce grouse appeared in front of the camp. Normally, Adam would definitely have caught it for food, but once the seed of quitting had taken root, there was no turning back. Having decided, he immediately called the production crew. Shortly after, a helicopter flew toward the camp. While 500,000 could make the rest of his life comfortable, when a person loses their direction and meaning of striving, life becomes dull and tasteless. Having reached this realization, Adam packed his luggage and left the challenge by helicopter. Challenge time update. By day 53, 3 contestants remained. Early on, Temujin hit a stroke of luck. From afar, he spotted a grouse caught in a trap. Holding his spiked club, he rushed forward. Little guy, facing disaster and still not sleeping. With 2 loud thumps, the grouse was killed. It looked quite plump and delicious. Back at camp, he took off his coat and cleaned the organs. No need to guess. What followed was another inhumane wilderness feast. The camera shifts to Callie. The entire area was covered in snowflakes, which thrilled her, having never seen such a thing. If a 200-pound roasted whole lamb appeared now, that would be a truly wonderful life. As the weather grew colder, without a fireplace for warmth, Callie suffered quite a bit these past few nights. Returning to camp, she quickly cleared a piece of ground. She collected some dry grass and crushed it. Mixing it with mud to make building material, she wrapped it around a frame made of dead branches and rotten wood. It should be noted that, if the mud-water ratio was too high, it would be too thin, and if it was too low, it wouldn't stick. She did the same for the smoke vent. Then, like weaving a net, she blocked the gaps above the fireplace. She lit a roaring fire to burn away the wooden frame inside. If all went well, but something went wrong. Looking at the big hole in the stove, Callie's half-day of effort had gone to waste. The camera shifts to Juan. Although he had entered a state of fasting, he still needed to drink water. He dressed fully inside his sleeping bag, trying not to waste a single calorie. Carrying his iron pot, he went to the shore he relied on for survival. Strong winds were mixed with heavy snow. The survival difficulty was obviously severe. After filling a whole pot, he immediately returned to camp, worried that the shelter would collapse under the snow overnight. He found a few branches to reinforce it. Simple as it was, he couldn't afford to be sloppy with the essentials. It is now day 54. Even with the warmth of the fire, Temujin still felt a piercing chill. It was time to reinforce the shelter. He went outside to collect a large number of pine branches. Layer by layer, the more he filled the gaps in the shelter, the better the insulation would be. It worked similarly to a down jacket. While he was happily gathering needles, he lost his balance and fell off a tree stump. Luckily, the fall wasn't too deep, and there were no sharp objects. Otherwise, Temujin would have had to pack his bags and leave. After finishing the work, the day quickly passed. Back at camp, warming himself by the fire, he drank some plain boiled water. He took inventory of his supplies. He had reindeer meat, a bag of berries, and a piece of grouse meat left. To boost morale, he decided to save them for Thanksgiving. It is now day 55. At the critical moment, when food and supplies were exhausted, Callie took out her last piece of dried fruit skin, rich in carbohydrates. She packed it up, preparing to eat while walking. Based on past experience, those who lasted until the end, without exception, had captured a large predator. Similarly, to take number 1, a 100-pound bear was a must. Carrying her bow and arrows, Callie went out hunting. Every move she made radiated the aura of a powerful warrior. First, she went to check the traps. Unfortunately, most of the snares were covered by snow. She hadn't caught so much as a mouse hair along the way, let alone hunted a polar bear. Helpless, Callie had to return empty-handed. Next came to consecutive days of blizzards. The contestants could only hide in their camps to keep warm. Except for fetching water, they dared not easily leave their shelters. Compared to Juan and Temujin, Callie's shelter happened to be built in a wine corridor. She needed several times more firewood than the other to keep warm. In the blink of an eye, it was day 58. He could truly no longer stand the hunger. He put the reindeer meat in a pot and boiled it over a high fire. Since it contained oxalates, it's best to boil it several times before eating. No one dared to waste the boiling water. He took it outside to pour, so it would freeze on the shelter, forming a protective film. This could reduce the cold air leaking into the house. After repeating the process 5, 6, 7, 8 times, The color looked about right. Finally, it was time to enjoy the feast. The camera shifts to Juan. As usual, he went to the shore to replenish the source of life. There was no need to heat it. He gulped down several mouthfuls. Compared to the other contestants, his strong immune system saved him a lot of calories. After all, 10 years of wilderness survival experience is no joke. Returning to camp, he collected some pine branches. To block the cold air from entering, he sealed the gaps in the door tightly, making sure not to miss any spot where wind could leak through, reducing energy consumption through physical insulation. It is now day 59. 3 days without food. Juan can hold out for another 3 days without water. Even a wilderness pro cannot hold on forever. But the worst part is, the ice is getting thicker by the day. After drilling through, the water quality is quite turbid. He gestured with his hand. The ice is not thick enough to support his weight. To get pure fresh water, he has to go to the deep water area. For this, Juan plans to craft an ice pick. To prevent falling into an ice hole, the pole cannot be too long or too short. He returned to camp and measured the length with his outstretched arms. He used a saw to remove the excess. He chopped it 81 times with an axe. Before long, he obtained a staff of just the right thickness and length. He disassembled the axe head and fitted it firmly into the pre-prepared end. To prevent it from coming loose, a screw was embedded in the middle. Not only can it break ice, but it is also perfect for self-defense. Meanwhile, Kali woke up in her ice cellar shelter. The stiffness of her frozen pant legs showed just how cold it was. Regardless of everything, once ready, she continued out to check her traps. It is bad enough that the shelter isn't ideal, but if there are no calorie supplements, by the time she quits, she'd be skin and bones. Just as she was worrying about the lack of protein, the cry of Jerry reached her ears again. As Tally hurriedly picked up her weapon, she found the target not far ahead. Poor thing, doesn't even know disaster is imminent. She drew her bow fully and let fly an arrow, learning from previous misses. This time it finally did not disappoint. Being able to eat fresh meat in the frozen wilderness, just thinking about it makes her drool. Back at camp, it was charcoal grilled to perfection in color, aroma, and taste. She feasted on it with great relish. Man, the meat was tender and juicy, neither dry nor greasy. It was the most delicious meal she had had so far. The protein content was countless times higher than beef. It is now day 61. Upon waking up, Temujin discovered something was wrong. A piece of his front tooth had chipped off. He probably accidentally bit into something hard. He couldn't worry about that now. The priority was to go out and find food. His heavy legs had barely trekked to Lee before he was breathless from exhaustion. As his fat reserves were depleted, his body began burning muscle for energy. Being a general practitioner, Temujin didn't dare gamble with his life. He went to where the stored meat was kept. He used a stick to pull it down. If he waited until Thanksgiving, he feared he'd be gone by then. Back at camp, he boiled it in an iron pot over a high fire. It was so delicious that even the bone fragments were eaten clean, paired with freshly cooked reindeer. Although the taste wasn't great, it was rich in carbohydrates. After eating a whole pot, the calories were dozens of times higher than beef. It is now day 62. As heavy snow began to fall, grass, squirrels, and berries all vanished. Looking at the beautiful scenery, Temujin couldn't bring himself to be happy. He had lost 48 jin in weight so far. This made the already terrible survival environment even worse. Even with his medical and combat experience, he was at his wit's end. Gathering firewood nearby, such a mundane task, left him feeling completely exhausted. He returned to camp and lit the fire. In this wretched weather, he tried to avoid going out as much as possible. Besides his physical state, Temujin's mental state was also taking a heavy toll. As for how much longer he could hold on, he could only take it one step at a time. The camera switches to Kali, while everyone else was thinking about how to save calories. She was actually entertaining herself by having a snowball fight. Truth be told, her optimistic mindset is something Temujin could learn from. With a take-it-as-it-comes attitude, she headed out again, switching to hunting mode, keeping an eye out for tracks in the snow, setting new traps. As she walked, her face suddenly screamed, "Oh my god." Looking closer, weren't those the wild rabbit prints she had been longing for? Craving meat, Kali couldn't wait to catch one for a treat. As light snow began to drift, the cry of Jerry reached her ears again. Jackpot. Protein literally delivering itself. She immediately drew her arrow and fired. Unfortunately, she missed by just 0.01 centimeters. Had it not been for the hunger and the bulky clothes, Tally would have definitely hit the mark. Missing was one thing, but she couldn't even find the arrow. After checking around, the traps were all empty. Blow after blow. The more optimistic she was before, the more depressed she felt now. Regardless of the blizzard outside, Juan lay in camp, entering fasting mode. But the worst part was, icicles from the trees pierced through the waterproof tarp. As the saying goes, a 1,000-mile dike can collapse from an anthill. Naturally, once the cold air seeped into the shelter, it would undoubtedly accelerate energy consumption. He stripped individual strands from a rope, Using his signature skill, he patched it up. It not only looked neat, but the quality was top-notch. It is now day 63. Temujin felt an unprecedented weakness. He took his iron pot out to get water. He walked those few dozen meters with extreme caution, under the dual torture of soul and body. Beautiful memories of the past flashed before his eyes. Overcome with emotion, he almost burst into tears. After that, Temujin seemed to make a decision. He removed the waterproof tarp from the shelter. He packed up his belongings. He wrapped everything in the waterproof tarp. Unsurprisingly, he chose to pack his bags and bail, to prove that he could do it. And to avoid bothering the staff as much as possible, he trekked a long distance to the shore. Without hesitation, he dialed the production team's phone. A helicopter flew in. A few people quickly arrived at the camp. He had done everything he could. But before his body collapsed, Temujin wanted to leave on his own 2 feet. Compared to the 500,000 that could change his fate, he hoped more that his mother could see this spirit of perseverance. He exited the challenge by boarding the plane. Time reaches day 64. His physical reserves were running lower and lower. To warm his body, Kwon decided to start a fire to boil water for the first time. He brought a cast iron pot to the riverbank. Unfortunately, the entire river was covered in wet snow. He wasn't picky. He just scooped up some source of life nearby. The fireplace built at the start finally came in handy. He used a fire starter to ignite the flames, and placed the iron pot on top to heat. As a result, as it heated up, things went wrong. A pungent smell of paint began to spread from the camp. The more he smelled it, the more dizzy he felt. Terrified, Juan hurriedly opened the door for ventilation. Truly, one wrong move and the whole game is lost. 2 wrong moves, and he lost 2 games. After the foul smell dissipated, he decided to replace the paint can. He got it done in a few quick steps, specifically leaving a spot for boiling water. By the time it was finished, it was already dark. Seeing everything working well, his efforts were not in vain. Time reaches day 66. A few sips of plain boiled water to soothe the stomach. She took out the last piece of fruit leather, although she lived hand to mouth. Callie still maintained an optimistic attitude. Carrying her jungle gear, she went out to check the traps again. After walking less than a kilometer, she saw wild rabbit footprints nearby. Sensing movement, she immediately prepared to draw her bow and shoot. Unexpectedly, even using all her strength, she could not pull the bowstring. At that moment, Callie realized the severity of the problem. She tilted her head back at a 45-degree angle, struggling to keep the tears from falling. For a hunter, this was no different from losing one's soul. She returned to camp dejectedly. How much longer could she hold on? It all depended on Callie's will to endure hunger. In the following days, cold air swept through Labrador again. Juan, as usual, barely survived on water. His body and mind had already entered a state of fasting, combined with the physical warmth of the fireplace. As long as his stomach didn't act out, holding on for another 10 to 15 days would not be a problem. On the other side, Callie had nothing better to do, so she collected many branches to weave snowshoes. With these, she could save quite a few calories when going out. The idea was wonderful, but in less than 2 minutes, a sharp pain shot through her fingertips. Clearly, due to long-term malnutrition, her blood circulation was poor, and mild frostbite appeared. If guessed correctly, she was not far from her physical limit. Time reaches day 73. As the storm calmed, Juan decided to go for a walk. The river surface, which he had been waiting for, was completely frozen. Carrying an ice chisel, he walked on the ice, while checking the thickness of the ice layer. In this scene, even while starving, it felt refreshing. The only downside was that loneliness and hunger were eroding his soul every moment. One slip-up, and all efforts could go to waste. Time reaches day 75. Pushing open the heavy door of the ice cellar, the snowy landscape in front gave Callie a shock. The weather was so cold that extreme cold could no longer describe it. Due to long-term malnutrition, nausea and dizziness followed. Thinking of the hardships along the way, she could no longer control herself and burst into tears. That feeling of total emptiness could not be described by merely skipping meals. Looking at the withdrawal phone in front of her, she fell into a deep struggle. She went outside to try and pull the bowstring, proving once again that she had reached her physical limit. Then, without further hesitation, she dialed the production team's phone. After waiting a short while, a helicopter flew in from behind. It landed smoothly. A few people carrying equipment arrived at the camp. Being unable to hunt, for a hunter, this was no different from being the Walking Dead. To preserve a shred of dignity, Callie didn't want to see herself being forcibly carried out of the challenge. 75 days was her physical limit, not her mental limit. If she had the chance to come back, she would definitely show her true strength as a hunter. Time reaches day 78. Only one remained in the challenge. As usual, he lay in the camp to save calories. Suddenly, he received a medical checkup notice from the production team. His adrenaline immediately surged, and all sleepiness vanished. To hide his plummeting weight, He gulped down several large mouthfuls of source of life water. Every move was like a student during a surprise inspection by a teacher. He hurriedly went outside to light a roaring fire and boiled a full pot of plain water. Just as he finished drinking, the small plane arrived, giving him no time to prepare. They immediately started weighing him and conducting detailed tests on heart rate and blood pressure. Afterwards, they communicated to understand Juan's psychological state. While he was talking incessantly, a figure quietly approached from behind. With a hunter's keen sixth sense, he turned around. Goodness, wasn't it the little girlfriend he had been longing for? As the pressure was released, at that moment, he tasted the sweetness after the bitterness. It seemed a bit like an unearned victory. But everything was within the rules of the challenge. Then, the two of them visited the environment he had relied on for survival for over 70 days. He packed up his luggage and went to the river to board the helicopter. Thus, he successfully completed this challenge.